People. How's everybody feeling this morning? Better than good. Great. I like great, amazing, wonderful, ecstatic. Those are the kinds of words that I like. I'm Super Joe Pardo, and this is How to Dream. All right, so some of you know me a little bit. Some of you probably, even the ones that know me a little bit, don't know stupid menu bars. Okay, so growing up, I knew at 6 years old that I wanted to be a child psychologist. How many people knew what they wanted to be when they were 6 years old? How many people are doing what they wanted to be at that age? Okay, how many of you that put your hands down are doing some form of what you wanted to do when you were that age? Well, the people that should have kept their hands up there, that are actually doing what they want to do. But no, that's my point is at 6 years old, I knew that I wanted to help people. I wanted to help other kids going through divorce like I was. And that's why I wanted to be a child psychologist. Growing up in a family business that was rising at the time, I felt at the age of 6 that I was supposed to take over that family business, right? The fourth generation, like that's what you're supposed to do. And that's why I ended up crying on my grandparents' floor. And my grandfather said something that helped change my life, said, hey, no, it's okay, you can be a street sweeper, as long as you do the best job that you can, that's what's important. And I didn't know this until literally yesterday, that my great-grandfather was a street sweeper. So I didn't know that actually came from somewhere until yesterday when I was interviewing my great aunt about like our whole family lineage. So, I wanted to be a child psychologist. I didn't really like school. When I found out I needed to do 10 years of schooling to be a psychologist, I was like, yeah, that's probably not for me. But just a few years later, I found out about DJing. So when I was about 10, I really fell in love with this idea of DJing. Unfortunately, I didn't know any DJs. I didn't know anybody who did it or had an interest in it or was willing to go down that rabbit hole with me until I was 17 years old. That's when I started on this awesome journey that helped me land to where I am right here, right now. And that journey included getting out of my shell, because I was a pretty shy kid, didn't like getting up in front of groups, speaking, and helping inspire other people, or doing anything of that nature. DJing was great, but it was still a hobby of mine. It's not something that I use as part of my business. I grew up, like I said earlier, in a family business. Part of those truck service parts was that family business. It was actually just sold almost 2 years ago, which was a year after I decided to leave. I worked there from the age of 6 to about 27. It was a $100 million business when I walked away from it, and I left it to start my own adventure. The important part about this is I didn't know what that adventure looked like. I didn't know, because I had never thought to myself, what is it that I want out of life? What is it that, like, I'm going to wake up every day and be like, oh, this is awesome, and not be so strung out and so stressed out that I'm mad and upset pretty much 6.5 days out of the week. Because it was a constant, every day was, I wasn't the president of the company, but I was doing all the president's work at the time, because I was being trained to take over this company. April 4th, 1414, super important day. 3 months before that, I started to do Adventuratorium, which ended up being a DJ, my first DJ album after DJing for like about 10 years. I put out my first DJ album. It's hip hop instrumentals mashed up with Disney music to tell the story of Up, if you recall Up. And my laser pointer doesn't work on blue-hued, purple-hued screens, but the Pixar's movie Up. I took that, made that into a story. We raised money for charity, for Give Kids the World. It was awesome. Now, what's important about this is it started a journey. Just 12 days before this came out, I left my family's business, April 2nd. That journey to make that decision took me over 4 years to do. It took me 3.5 years just to come up and tell my dad that, hey, I think I want to do something else with my life. And that night that I told him was in August. I was helping a friend move. We were using one of our trucks from the company, so my car wasn't there. I packed up the truck, got in my friend's car, drove over to my dad's house, and I don't know why it had to be that night, but it was, for some reason it had to be that night, and told him I wanted to move on. And of course, his first question was like, well, what do you plan on doing? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm going to go back to school. I don't have a degree. Let me go back to school and figure it out. I'll figure something out. That was August. It wasn't until, I ended up staying until April, trying to figure out what I was going to do. In the meantime, I was going back to school. Adventuratorium came out, and on, like I said, April 2nd was my last day. 1 month after Adventuratorium came out, this came into my life, cake. I love cake. Does anybody else like cake? I like anniversary cakes, right? So, this was from the 1-year anniversary of the Dreamers podcast. Just 1 month after dropping Adventuratorium, I was on a plane to Disney World with a good friend of mine to run a race. Does anybody else like running? Awesome. I know I don't look like I run much, but we had a kid in the last year and a half, and if anybody can tell you, it's a tough time. So anyway, we were there on the plane, and he's like, "Hey Joe, have you heard of this other podcast?" Because I was at the time going on podcasts, Disney podcasts, to promote this. And I was like, "Hey, is there any shows on this list?" There was like 120 podcasts that, other Disney shows that I might have missed. He said, there's a couple, but there's this other show that just interviews entrepreneurs. And I was like, wait, there's podcasts that just interview people? Like, all the shows I was trying to go on were just roundtable discussions about Disney that talk about how awesome Disney World is, or Disney. And here I was, like, not even thinking, like, oh man, like, Larry King Live is the thing. Or, well, I think it was just called Larry King? Was it called Larry King Live? Right. Anyway, like, shows that just interview people. And so I'm like, I know a lot about business. I know a ton of people, business owners, entrepreneurs. I could totally do something like that. I was like, but I know a lot more people that live their dreams. And that's how the Dreamers podcast was formed. When the plane landed, I registered the domain name, the Twitter handle, and the Facebook page before we even got to the rental car. So, 2 weeks after that, now I already had a background in technology, recording. I just recorded my first DJ album. Like, I kind of had an idea what I was doing. I had a friend help me get some of the missing pieces in there, and it helped me out a ton. 2 weeks later, first episode came out. A week after that, I started going 3 days a week with it. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I started going 5 days a week with it, and just continued and that was a ridiculous pace for about 4 months of 5 days a week release schedule. Why did I slow down? I only released the show 1 day a week now. We're now 3.5 years from that. In that 3.5 years time, I've gone from 5 days a week to 3 days a week down to 1 day a week. The reason? Time, right? I knew that I wanted to do other things. Tying in with this whole idea of building a business around a podcast, around an audio show, where most people at the time had never even heard of the word podcast. I mean, how many of you have heard word podcast before? I mean, we're in a tech room, so I would think most people here have, but I can tell you a lot of people had not, and they were very skeptical of, like, what is it that you're doing? I don't get it. In fact, one person, when I was explaining, like, hey, I'm going to be writing books, I'm going to be doing talks, I'm going to be doing consulting, coaching, and everything revolves around the podcast. My, basically, they're like grandparents, they live across the street from me. I live in the house I grew up in, so I've lived there pretty much my whole life. I bought the house back in 2009. I'm sitting there, and the sister of my neighbor said, quit, this doesn't make any sense, go back and work for your dad. And this was like only like a month or so into this whole process, maybe 2 months in. And I was in shock, because I was trying to be nice, right? Like, I don't want to be rude to my sister, the neighbor, somebody who's like a grandparent to me's sister, like, that's not right. So, it hurt a lot to have somebody say that to me, because it was like, oh, I'm never going to be as successful as what my dad and my grandfather did? That person had no idea what I came from, what I experienced, why I even left. Didn't even hear that part of the story. They just understood that I was here and didn't believe, never heard of this, so it must not be good. So what I say to that is, and after that, I realized something. Life is about learning, right? And if you're learning, then you're growing, and if you're growing, you're not dying. Because as soon as you stop growing, you start dying. And for me, when people ask me that question, they'd be like, Joe, this sounds awesome. It's a podcast, and you're helping other people, and you're connecting with people literally around the world. Like, I have friends in so many countries that I would never have known. From Nigeria to the Philippines to Japan to everywhere. It is insane how many people that I've gotten to meet because of this show. I say, if I was in school right now and we were meeting, the first question you wouldn't ask me is, does anyone want to take a guess what the first question you wouldn't ask?
How did you start your podcast?
No. Well, you're right. That is a question that they wouldn't ask me. The question that they wouldn't ask me is, how much money have you made from this podcast? How are you making money from this podcast? Or going to school in this case, right? How much money have you, you're in school, who's in school? Anybody in school? No, just Chris, you in school?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you know what? How much money are you making from being in school?
Would you be, you don't make any money.
Oh, really? Well, how are you going to live? That doesn't make any sense.
Question.
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
have a part-time job, but do you make money off ads?
I will get into that. I will get into that, for sure. I will definitely get into that. So, you know what? The truth of the matter is I've made $0 from my podcast. I have no advertisers. Don't want advertisers for the most part. There's one or two that I would be interested in, but I really don't want money from that. What I get money from is because of my podcast. It's because of the talks. It's because of the consulting. It's because of the networking. Because of the books. Because of speaking engagements. That's how I make money from that. Because I'm actually being here, right? Some of you know I work at HopeWorks, right? I wouldn't be at HopeWorks if it wasn't for this show. I wouldn't have this show, bless you, if I didn't go to Disney World. If I didn't have that Disney injection from when I was young, that belief of the magic and the experience and the process and all that stuff. All that played a part in building up to like being in my family's business and actually learning the lessons and living through it, not just observing it from the outside. Going back to the podcast, one of the reasons I went from 5 days down to 3 days was so I could write my first book. It's been featured on the Huffington Post, it's been featured on entrepreneur.com and foxnews.com as a top book for business and life growth. As you can see, I did all my own pictures here. I wanted to prove a point of that you can do what it is even if you're not something. I'm not an artist, but I play one in this book. And I also wrote the book very short and to the point because I don't really like reading books. I'm very slow at reading. So for me, I was really interested in the idea of like, what can I do write a book, create a book that's me, right? That's like a mantra for me. My second book is called How to Dream Big and Win. The title of this talk. This is a coloring book. The reason this is a coloring book is because coloring all this stuff in with a Sharpie marker killed my hand and took forever. So I decided, and the other problem is this is now a black and white book on the inside because it was so expensive to print color on every single page that I decided, you know what, I'm going to make a coloring book. I'm not going to color it. I'll let you color it in. I'll let you go through the process. And the part of the coloring is to increase your ability to get back into a mind frame of a child so you can figure out what it is that you want to be when you grow up and when you make that decision that, you know what, I'm not going to do with the path. I'm not going to be on the path that I'm on right now. And the third book, this was written in 10 days. It's called I Self-Empower. It was based on a dream that I had not that long ago, like a month or two ago it came out, 3 months ago, about repetition artwork. Does anyone know what repetition artwork is?
Repeating your art over and over and over.
Yep. Like the Marilyn Monroe pictures that like have different colors in each one. I woke up from a dream and said, why can't I do that with words? So I did that. It's 160 affirmations, self-affirmations that are written in a form of repetition artwork. And then I used a paintbrush to paint over the words so that there's actually hidden messages inside the book. 10 days later, that was a book from a dream. I woke up I was starting to go to sleep and I woke up like 20 minutes after being asleep and started to write out. I wrote out like 70 self-affirmations and then the next morning wrote a few more, wrote a few more, and did the book. So, 3.5 years into the business into the Dreamers podcast, and I've done a few other podcasts too along the way. I'm now a business winner podcast of the 2017 Podcast Awards, which is the 12th annual Podcast Awards for the Dreamers podcast. But at the same time, I was like, I was nominated for a business award. I feel like maybe it's time for a change. Because the tagline from the Dreamers podcast went from about inspiring other people and being an inspirational podcast to really being about business, because that's what I love. So I ended up adding the tagline like 6 months ago, business lessons from those who live their dreams. And all of a sudden, my downloads went up. It was great, like crazy, because people got it. It wasn't just some inspirational like fluff thing. But also what I got from it was when I talked to some of my friends, they're like, Joe, I love your show, it's amazing, but I would have passed over it if it wasn't for knowing you. Because it's the Dreamers podcast, it's all written in Sharpie artwork, just like my first book. It's got its style of its own. It's an award-winning process, apparently. It takes 3.5 years to do, which, by the way, a good friend of mine was nominated 9 times for different categories, and he had just won finally this year, which made me feel really good, because I wanted him to win, but also because I won the first try. So I changed the name to The Business Podcast featuring Super Joe Pardo. And it's done wonders for the brand. Because people know what it is. So, I'm going to talk about dreamers, and then I'm going to talk about AAA dreams, and basically how you admit, accept, and achieve. And that's the process that I ended up going through, and it's the process that I wrote about in my second book, How to Dream Big and Win. I want to highlight Alex McKelvey. At the time, Alex McKelvey had done 6,000 random acts of kindness. She lost her grandmother at the age of 60. She celebrated her life by doing 60 random acts of kindness, and then 600 in 1 year, and then 6,000 in 1 year, the following year. It's people like her that really inspired me to do more and go and be more. Logan Guloff, a good friend of mine. He won MasterChef Junior Season 2. Anybody watch MasterChef Junior? It's a really good show. It's almost like you're afraid to admit it. But it's a good show, right? Gordon Ramsay has got a big heart of gold. He just doesn't show it on any of his. I don't watch any of his other shows, so I'm not really that interested. But this show particularly is great because these kids are from that YouTube generation where they if you wanted to be a chef back in the day, you had to know somebody who knew how to plate food, or you had to go read books about it. Now you just look it up on your phone. Boom, all of a sudden you got yourself how to plate food, how to get better at being a chef, how to do all this, how to cut the right kind of cuts. I don't know, I don't cook. But he started cooking at the age of 2 years old, took cooking seriously by 8, by 10 he met President Obama, and then by 12 he won MasterChef Junior Season 2. Awesome kid, by the way, awesome kid. In fact, he just put out his first book, which is a comic book about cooking, and Jessica Alba wrote the foreword for it. Andrew Zappoli, local kid, and I don't know if anybody would know who he is. He was on MasterChef Junior 3, local in West Deptford. He was the first runner-up. Started cooking at the age of 2, took cooking serious by 6. By 12, he became MasterChef Junior 3, first runner-up. Taking stuff seriously and spending the time to really cultivate and practicing, good practicing versus just I'm playing the guitar, that's awesome, but are you actually practicing for a purpose, or are you just practicing for the sake of having it in your hand and strumming? Being very purposeful is super important. So back to admit, accept, and achieve. Admit, what dreams do you have? What are some of the dreams that you all have here? Anybody want to feel brave? Chris?
Well, one, trying to get a multimedia business started, trying to figure out what major I want, trying to figure out how to pass my class and stay focused, trying not to neglect my resources and just man up.
No, I think those are all really important, and I think it's important that you're self-aware enough to know that you need to stay focused, right? Because it's so easy for us to just be no, I'm focused, I'm good, I got this. But But the truth of the matter is if you're not self-aware about it, that's when you start to fall into the pitfalls of like, buying into your own stuff too much. So I think that's really great. I think wanting to have a multimedia business is amazing. I think that as long as you have that self-awareness, you'll be able to keep correcting yourself and correcting yourself and correcting yourself until you get to where you want to go. It's super, being able to be self-aware is really, really important. Anybody else?
I want to be a game developer.
Oh, awesome. What kind of?
Sweet.
That is awesome. In fact, one of my friends growing up, we used to make fun of him because we'd go to these LAN parties. Anybody know what a LAN party is?
Yes.
Yeah, right. We're all gaming on different computers in the same room. Anyway, we'd go to these, and by like the late afternoon, nighttime, he'd be doing Photoshop, and we used to make fun of him and say, "Oh, you're playing multiplayer Photoshop," because we're all sitting here playing games, and he's off in his own little world doing. But he was really good at games too, so he was really, really good. But he turned that into going to the Art Institute of Philadelphia, graduated top of his class. Now he owns a game development company in Philly. And so that's what it's really important to know that unless you're starting your own business, but even if you are, because you're competing on a different level, that when you're doing things that have competition like that, it's really important that you're living it like in here, right? And living it 24/7, because the people that you go to school for, say you went to school for it, you're going up and you all graduate, you all get the same degree, but like the people that have been doing it since they were like 6 years old, you're competing against somebody who already has 12 years of experience under the belt. So like you need to start today, right? Like if you're not coding and doing all that stuff and learning everything you can, today, like when you get home today, you need to start like taking it seriously. How about you?
Game designer.
Game designer. All right, same thing applies. Chris.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be a game designer too, but this is where like about the all the paths I get confused on. How much like I heard that like game design doesn't make a lot of money, but like over reality of what you should be doing, and then over your dream, how do you break even with that?
So you are just like lobbing it in for me. I so appreciate that. So the best way to do it is to start from where you want to end up, right? And then go work backwards from there. Because who cares if it's a lot of money? Money doesn't mean shit. Money means that you can get to the life that you're looking for down here, right? But if you don't care and you're like, I'll live in an apartment, that doesn't bother me. I don't need a car, that doesn't bother me. Or want a car, that doesn't bother me. Well, then all of a sudden you just lowered how much money you need. Schooling, right? Like you could go to school and waste a whole bunch of money going to school. Now you have that debt. It's going to be harder to live the life that you want to get to if you're not really focused on what it is that's going to bring, the value it's going to bring to you, and that you utilize it right. What's up, Chris?
So what major did you choose?
Business administration. Because I wanted to be a game designer too, and my dad said, I'm not willing to pay for school for that, but if you go to school first and get your associate's degree in business administration, then I'll pay for whatever you want to go for afterwards.
So I never really met a person that had a solid business administration degree, but because I have all these ideas, but I know as a college student, I'm in also like a kid position, I don't have all the skills, and I can't be master of everything, because like I could do jack of all trades, but I'll be master of none, and that would take way too much time. So that's why I say, hey, I might choose business. But there's still also game design and development that I might personally want. But I was thinking of like, for instance, if I choose an associate in business and further it, I could at least try and develop some type of business schedule and plan and have people do it for me. Like a manager, manage my own dreams, eventually get up to the level of Walt Disney and like Marvel.
So if you take it, and I think that having that business background it helps, especially if you didn't grow up in a family business.
Right.
A lot of stuff that they'll teach you there isn't necessarily what will apply when you actually get there. But at that point, I would say that your hobby at that point needs to be game development. Watching those YouTube videos, learning how to use Photoshop, CAD, coding, Unity, writing code in Unity would be, or it's called Unity, right? Yeah, Unity. I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's a chart.
Yeah, and Sharp. So, Chris, can we I'll get with you afterwards? I'll be here for a little while afterwards. Because I don't want to run out of time. So you need to be able to accept those dreams, right? So it's like, why pursue those dreams? Why would you want to pursue those dreams? Because a lot of people will tell you like, oh no, like you shouldn't, and it's because it didn't work out for them. You know, they gave up on their dreams.
Right.
Happiness is why you would want to pursue your dreams. Fulfillment, increase in productivity. You know, because it doesn't always have to be a business. This isn't all about just having a business. This could be about having that hobby that makes you so happy that it's okay if you have a job that sucks, you know, for the time being. You know, this isn't forever, but this is to get you to that place where you're happy enough and it can increase your productivity because you're also working on skill sets that you're not going to work on anywhere else, right? If it's just that hobby, if you're just learning it, while you're in school. You're going to build confidence. I am super. You're going to meet other dreamers. You're going to meet other people that are interested in what you want. I mean, every single person here today made a choice to be here on a Saturday when it's really pretty nice outside, you know, to learn more about their craft, about tech, about networking, about honing in on their skills. You're going to inspire others, right? There's other people that are going to look at you and be like, oh man, you know, I don't want to be a game designer, but I want to do this thing and look what you did. How can I go about doing that? You can live without regrets. You don't have to wake up at the end of your life and be like, man, you know, there's so many things I really wish I could have done. I could have did it better. I could have did it more. I could have actually even started. You know, time is your most limited resource that we all have. And it's the most, you know, it's the thing that everybody gets. It doesn't matter who you are. You all get the same 24 hours. Like, that doesn't mean that you have to be up 24 hours. There's times where you will. There's times where you need, you know, the chips are down, you gotta swing the bat. You gotta know when to do that. But there's also times where it's like, you know, taking care of yourself, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're hydrated, make sure you're eating right, are the important things that'll get you to where you want to be too. It's just about balancing that all out. So figuring out what dream to pursue. I talked a little bit about it over here on this side of the wall. You know, what would you do if money didn't matter? You know, Chris said, oh, well, game developers don't make a lot of money. Well, that's okay. You don't need a lot of money. You don't need as much money as you probably think that you do. I mean, one exercise I do with people, they're like, oh, well, you know, I want to move. Great example. A friend of mine came to me and we were talking, and he's like, I want to move to Santa Monica. I want to live like right at the beach in California. I'm like, okay, well, what's holding you back from that? And he's like, well, I don't have a $100,000 a year job. I'm like, well, you wouldn't necessarily, I mean, unless you get the job out there, the job's going to be here. It doesn't translate unless you get that job out there, right? But you don't need that. So what did we do? We went online, started to figure out, like, let's look at apartments. We found an apartment. I was like, so I was like, look, for less than $40,000 a year, you could live in a one-bedroom studio, like 6 blocks from the beach in Santa Monica. Really nice place. Really, really nice place, actually. But that's if you're okay with living in an apartment. It's all about what you want. Do you want to live in a rural area, an urban area, suburban area? Do you want to have a car? Do you not want to have a car? Those are all things that you need to figure out. You need to figure out what your passion is, because your job, it doesn't necessarily equate to what you're passionate about in the first place. It can, hopefully it is, but you need to figure out what you're passionate about. In his case, it's summer. What steps are needed to advance your passion? You need to increase your abilities. You need to get super at what you do. So you need to be willing to. That's not my phone, is it? I hope not. No, it's not my phone. Oh, it's okay. You need to increase your abilities. I thought I made a rookie mistake and had my phone not on silent. You need to increase your abilities. So you need to practice. You need to be willing to work at it. Like I said, when the chips are down and taking opportunities. Those are things that you're only going to be able to do more with more time. You need to take it seriously, right? If you're not taking your dream seriously, then why do you deserve it? You got to take it seriously. No one's going to take it seriously for you. Everyone's going to look at you and be like, well, you never did that before. Why are you going to be able to do it now? Well, they're right. until you're ready to do it. Like, until you take it seriously. Until you look at it with confidence and say, look, I look at all these other people that have done it, why can't I do it? You know? Then we can start to achieve. You know, you need to bless you. You need to be willing to responsibly pursue your dream. You know, a lot of people that talk about this kind of stuff won't tell you that. They'll just be like, rah, rah, you gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta do this. Like, you're right. But you also have to be responsible about it. Like I said, you don't have to grind your face off to the point where you're like out of your mind because you've been up for 3 days. Now, there's times where that's gonna happen, but that's not every day. You have to decide, you have to figure out when's the right time to do those kinds of things. That's, you know, how much money are you willing to invest? How much time are you willing to invest? How much of yourself are you willing to invest? To be responsible about it, you know, and then figure out, can your passion be a career? Chances are, yes, it probably can, but you have to be so committed to it that it's going to make it a career, because people are going to come to you at that point and be like, man, I really think this is awesome, let me pay you for that. You know, like, you know, game developers, like Chris was saying, you know, don't make a lot of money. The reason is because if you don't make great games and you don't get to that point, that level, why would anyone pay you for something that they don't like? You'll find others like you, like I said earlier, connecting with other dreamers. There's other people out there that are doing the same things that you're trying to do, and you'll make it. You know, you bring your experiences to that table, and you can learn from other success and failures. I mean, you know, I'm not saying you should follow every single person, because then you end up getting this endless loop of following too many people, and following too many stories, and taking too much advice, and blah blah blah. But look, there's other people out there. You know, if you know, what would it have been like if Steve Jobs was sitting in the chair I was sitting in talking to my grandmother's sister? Would he have said, you know, probably F off? Probably, but you know, I'm a little too nice for that. You know, but that's my point is that you need to understand what's important to you and what you're confident about and what you're willing to build and what you're willing to go through. You know, these people that are willing to tell you that, no, that's not going to happen. Now, I will say this, the reason that they're saying that is probably because they care about you. And they don't want to see you suffer. It's not because not just because they gave up on their dreams, but that's part of what's bringing them to that point. But they do care about you, and that's probably why they're saying that, especially if it's somebody that's close to you. The most important one, now, like you were saying, Chris, earlier about like getting to that Walt Disney level, that Marvel level, that hot, like, you know, big level, it all starts starting small, right? You have to be willing to start with the smallest viable product that you possibly can build. You know, who here has played Minecraft, right? Okay, how did Minecraft get started? It was like $5, right? It was $5 for like a pre-build, like pre-alpha, and it just rolled on and on and on from there. You gotta start small, and people that see the vision they'll get it, and then you can build big, right? You'll grow from the pieces and grow into something that's so big that people are like, wow, I can't believe that happened, you know? And we go back to, what's the lifestyle do you want? Do you live in the city? Do you want to have a car? Do you want to live in the suburbs? You know, what is it? What's the end result for you? If you figure that out first, then you can figure out how much money you need. You know, how much education do you need? How many hours do you need to get there? You got to figure out what lifestyle you want. And for me, when I left my family's business, my whole goal was to not lose my house. It's the house I grew up in. I don't care about bigger houses. I don't care about any other stuff. I care about keeping what I got. That was the goal. And 3.5 years later, I can say that we accomplished that. For now, you know, every day is a challenge. But that's the lifestyle I want. I wanted to keep living in my suburban home that I grew up in. That's it. How much money does it take to pursue your dreams? How much do you need to invest? Is it in advertising? Is it in trainings? Is it in school? Is it in, what is it in that, and how much are you willing to invest to pursue your dreams? Now, with that said, don't just go dropping money that you don't necessarily have on things that are like magic pills and things of that nature, because they're very, very, very few and far between magic bullets that'll give you exactly what you want. Also, be willing to decrease your expenses. One of the things I had to do when I left my family's business was I had to decrease my expenses by quite a bit, all at once. And that's okay. You know, I decreased it in the areas that I could, so that I could maintain what we had instead of being like, great, now we got to go find another house, which is still not going to really solve the problem because like we still got to have money coming in to pay for said house. What's your question?
What are the first expenses that you had to decrease?
So the auxiliary ones, right? Like cable, we got rid of cable. We don't even have, we still don't have cable today, even though I work at Hope's. We just use over-the-air television, lowered our internet bill, reduced electricity costs. Here's one, I stopped getting haircuts. I spent $15 on a pair of clippers and cut my hair, and I really wish I hadn't done that. But part of that was I didn't have a lawnmower because we had had a lawn service for so long. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to go out and cut lawns. I'm still going to have to go and get a lawnmower, and then that's a big expense that I don't want to incur. I'm just going to stop cutting my, because I just get my hair cut twice a week. That's $40 a month, you know. So it adds up. Stop going out to lunch or dinner, you know. Stop driving so much. So reduce fuel and things of that nature.
How did you stop going out to like you say you don't cook, but
My wife cooks.
oh, okay.
Yeah. No, my wife cooks. So I was just, but part of that was also I was home every day.
Oh.
So like didn't have to go out and get food every day, like, you know, because I'm out at work or whatever. You know, so that was another way to do it. You know, we just reduced, because she has a job too. She's a school teacher. So we still had some income coming in. Plus, I was getting started. So, you know, it wasn't the end of the world, but you know, you have to figure out like what can you reduce to get there. What's necessity versus a want, right? Needs versus wants. So you have to assess that. And to me, like not getting a lawnmower and cutting the lawn was a want, but it was also like, well, I don't want to go buy a lawnmower and do all that. So we found other ways to make that. Oh, another way was instead of getting a lawn cut every 2 weeks, we moved it to 3 weeks. So now it wasn't getting cut as often, so it was less expensive across the board. Little things like that can add up big time, right? Because if you figure, you know, if you can save, you know, $50 a year, that's $500, or a month, that's $500, $600 a year. All of a sudden, you just start knocking it down. And how much time will it take to pursue your dream? You know, how many years are you willing to invest in being told no? How many years are you willing to invest in training, learning, getting better, networking, whatever it's going to take to make that dream a reality? Like how many years, how much time are you willing to invest in it to make it happen? So what other sacrifices do you need to make? Patience. You know, I never really knew I never really knew patience until I met my friend, and so I think some of you were in that talk for Max, Max the blind blogger. Was either? No? Okay. So one of the guests I met through my show came to my conference back in May, and he's totally blind, can't see anything. I'd never met a blind person before. And I got to ask so many awesome questions and learn so many things, but patience was a big keystone in that. Because I was like, how do you have the patience to sit there and have your phone read off what's on your screen, and then you scroll a little bit and it basically starts reading the same stuff off again until you get it to the next screen, you know. You just keep reading and reading and reading. I was like, how do you have the patience for that? And he's like, Joe, he's like, when I became blind, that's what I had to do, was learn how to be even more patient than I ever was before. And having patience to make your dream come true is so critical, because things aren't going to come overnight until you're ready for them. You might not realize that you're not ready for it, but you're probably not ready for it. That's why you're not getting the opportunity yet. Or you're not ready to wake up early that one day, or 5 days in a row, or go to sleep late 5 days in a row and wake up early the next morning to get it done. Like when you're ready, that's when those things will start to come your way. So you gotta have patience. So you need to prepare for rejection, because that, you know, I've been there. It's happened. Rejection also happened between me and my family as well. You know, there was years where it was not accepted what I was doing. Bless you. Even growing up in and I only know this because of yesterday, growing up in this extremely long lineage of entrepreneurs, going back to coming off the boat from Italy, at the turn of the century. So, that rejection is very real, and you're going to experience it. And I hope that you do, because it'll make you stronger and more conviction for what you want in the long run. And being misunderstood, telling people like, hey, I got this plan, I'm going to make these books, I'm going to do this podcast, blah, 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 blah. And people aren't going to connect those dots. Like, I connected those dots. I knew where I was heading, but I just didn't know what it was going to look like yet. And people are not going to understand that. And prepare for doubt, because I can't tell you how many times I was on the couch crying in the afternoon, or just feeling super depressed and having to like just turn on the TV, because I'm just like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I'm supposed to be sitting at my desk at work, wishing that, it's 2:30, man, I really wish 5 o'clock would get here, or 5:30 would get here so I could go home and do something else. So there's doubt that's going to creep in, because you're going to have opportunities that come your way and then not come, like, for some reason they will not be there. They'll get ripped away from you, or they'll fall through, or they're not as good of an opportunity as you hoped that it was going to be. And prepare for fear, right? Fear of failure. But failure is really just a lesson. And that's why you need to learn those hard lessons for yourself, right? You can hear the stories, you can hear my story, like, that's great. It's not the hardest story in the world. I mean, most people don't get the opportunity to walk away from what I did, but that's not the hardest story in the world, right? I've heard millions of stories that are way harder than mine. And that's an exaggeration, it's probably more like 1,000. But anyway, those hard lessons, they're there for you to learn from. Remember, if you're not learning, then you're not growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. So you need to prepare for hard work. It's like, none of this happens, books don't write themselves. Everybody has a book inside them, but they gotta take the time to write them. They gotta take the time to cultivate them, to write them in the same voice, to really find the words that matter to you, that are going to matter to someone else. And hopefully it matters to at least one person, but that's not why you should do it. Chris?
Then how do you improve from making a skill to doing Lovecraft, if I said that correctly?
Minecraft.
No, I would say like Lovecraft, because in Bloodborne and stuff, the irony is, if you die, or let's say in this case, a part of your dream dies, but then you wake up to reality. But let's say if you keep it the same way that you wanted to, then you just stay in this constant loop. And let's say that's for like, at least every part of an idea has like a real flaw, or has like this circle that you need to get up to, but there's really no way, only up. Cause it's just like with a credit card, and you have no credit. You see like where to get a credit card.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can't get a credit card, then I have to get a student credit card. But how do I do that? And then you have to break it down to see where you can get like a student credit card, how much it costs, and knowing that you have to spend your own money, look at that consequence actually as a positive to help you be more responsible. I know I have a MasterCard, and I mean, I've hit hard times where I just have to pay it fully off and not use it. And like, I know I've been like burned a few times, like with the Verizon and stuff. And like when Verizon tried to secretly put this thing which messed up my credit a little bit, because they tried to scam me.
Oh.
But
Chris, can y'all please talk about this after? I really want to hear what you guys say.
That's alright.
Not being.
I actually lost where you were in the beginning there.
Oh, sorry.
But we'll talk afterwards. So yeah, the hard work is there, and sometimes you have to figure out what the hard work is going to look like, because you be like, I need to build a rocket, but what you really need is not a rocket, it's something completely different. But you won't figure that out until you've learned the hard lessons of putting that rocket together, and like all the blood and the sweat and the tears that come along with doing that. And then you prepare for progress, right? So like, I started with the Dreamers Podcast, and then it became the Dreamers Podcast, business lessons from those who live their dreams. Now it's the Business Podcast featuring Super Joe Pardo. That is progress. That is, the thing is you're not going to know what you don't know until you've experienced it. And sometimes some people will be able to help you out with that and give you some advice and be like, hey, look at this. Well, if you just turn it this way, look at it from a whole different perspective. All of a sudden you can see it, but the thing is you might not have met that person if you didn't put all that hard work in for the thing that you just needed to turn like you know, a little bit to see the whole picture. But eventually, you can start to prepare for fulfillment, right? Being fulfilled that you're doing what it is that you really want. In my case, it was getting to meet with people from all around the world and get paid to help people. That's really what it comes down to in my business. Is just helping people, whether it's helping the employees, to helping the management, to helping the owners themselves. That's what gives me fulfillment. Going all the way back to wanting to help kids be, okay with their parents getting divorced. Then you get accomplishment, like the award that I just won the other, like 2 weeks ago, right? Like that, like I cried. Like there's a YouTube video, if you go to my channel, there's a video called I Cried, and it's me crying while watching the acceptance video for it. Because I never thought that people would get what I want, and make it into a reality. And as a reality of, this is called the Dreamers Podcast, but it's really a business podcast. But it beat out, like, one of the shows, I really thought he was going to win. The guy, Eric, he's been on my show before. His show is like constantly on the top of like iTunes business and the what's hot, like within like the top 5, called the Beyond the To-Do List. I was like, oh, he's going to totally win. I'd be shocked if he doesn't win. I didn't think I would win, but it did, and it means the world to me. Then you start to get success, right? People start taking you seriously. And then you get the recognition, right? And people really recognize you as that person, that go-to person for the thing that you've built and you spent the hard work and all the time and all the effort on, because you were willing to put it in the first place. And then happiness, right? Taking off and doing the things that you really enjoy and love. So, you can learn more about business and life from my show, the Business Podcast, as well as from my 3 books that you can get all at superjoepardo.com. I don't unfortunately have any copies with me, but they're all available digitally through Amazon, Kindle.
The talk this made me realize and feel as though that even as far as having a dream and then taking the risk and the challenge of even though those who may doubt you're taking the risk to make a dream a reality, and it's not an easy process. But through the lessons that you've experienced, like you said, prepared you for your achievements, the achievement that you have now that has been achieved with your own business. By writing books, doing a podcast, and something that was something new that you took the challenge and the risk. So it was very inspiring because, like I said, I would like to see more about youth understand their dream. And I think the one thing that you also said was coming back to the child mind. Because we can lose that child innocent within us, going through life. But I think that's very important when it comes to business and being creative. So it was very inspiring, and like I said, I look forward to hearing some more of your future endeavors.